Hi, welcome to BCI Ask the Experts. I'm Brad White, joined today by our two experts, Dr. Brian Lubers and Dr. Bob Larson. This is our chance to answer your questions. If you have questions you'd like us to answer, you can send us an email at bci@ksu.edu. And then when our experts answer the question, they each get up to 10 points as we go through the process. And today we've got a doozy, guys. So it's on vaccines. And the listener question was related to, I hear a lot about killed versus modified live for viral vaccines. And often we're talking about viruses that could affect cows or calves. I'm giving a little background framing. But the listener question is, can you compare and contrast those for me? Can you tell me what are the differences and should I care? Brian, I'm going to you first.
Okay, so I guess I'll start with killed because that's, I think, the easiest one to explain, right? So a killed vaccine is simply we grow up the virus in a culture and then we kill it, right? And then there's a little more that happens to that, but a pretty simple explanation, right? And so in that vaccine is a whole piece of virus, right? And so we are, and so then when we process that and then we administer that as a vaccine, the animal's immune system is exposed to basically all the outside pieces of the virus, which is what normally happens when somebody gets a viral or a calf gets in a viral infection. They're exposed to that virus. It's just with a killed vaccine, the virus isn't replicating, so there's no chance it would cause that disease in the animal after vaccination.
All right, Bob, I'm going to give Brian 7 points for his explanation. Tell us about modified lives.
Yeah, and again, I want to emphasize that really what we're talking about for cattle are a couple of viral diseases such as IBR, BVD, BRSV, a few things. Yep. And the interesting thing, IBR and BVD can cause abortion in cows, and they can contribute to respiratory disease in calves. And so that's one of the reasons why we talk about those so much is because it's an adult cow virus issue, and it's a growing calf virus issue. And so we vaccinate both those classes of cattle, reproducing cows and growing calves. And when you talk about a modified live vaccine, what you've done is, again, you start with the viruses, IBR or BVD, and then in the lab, they pass them through several passages so that they lose their how bad they are. They lose their virulence. So they still are alive and they can still reproduce in a cow or a calf, but they don't cause severe disease. And so that's why they're called a modified live. They're still alive, but they've been modified so they don't cause disease as much. Now, the negative aspect, so the positive is that's actually even closer to what really happens. And so you get a very similar immune response to what would happen if they had actually been exposed to the full dose of those viruses. And so you get a very typical and usually protective dose or immune response to those. And that's kind of the advantages of the modified live. You may understand also that the disadvantage is, well, what if that animal's immunocompromised or doesn't respond well? Then we can have either lack of response or maybe we let the virus do more damage than it should have. So there's pluses and minuses to both of these technologies.
So one of the reasons that I might, and I'm going to jump in on the listener said, why should I care? Well, there's some differences in handling and administration of these. So Brian, tell us about handling of the killed, and Bob got 7 points for his answer, but you guys got to be quick on these handling.
Yeah, so for killed vaccines, the big things are, so the virus is dead, so but we want to keep that vaccine cool. But the kind of the advantage to a killed vaccine is it has a little better storage life, right? And so you often see killed vaccines in large multi-dose bottles. If you use some now and you didn't use it all up, you can put it in the refrigerator and you can use it a couple weeks later, finish it off or whatever. So there's some advantages there as far as handling. But in the field, you need to keep that vaccine cool. The other thing is you can use it. It's not as sensitive to disinfectants that people might be using on their needles and stuff, which is one of the downsides to modified lives.
9 points for Brian, but he went over time, so he went back down to 8. Bob, you've got a shot, but it's got to be a quick, good answer.
All right. So as you can imagine, a modified live is different than what Brian said in that this is the vaccines that come where it's two bottles. One has got the dried little pellet at the bottom, and then the other one is the liquid, and you reconstitute it, and they're usually smaller bottles because what you don't use up today or even this morning needs to be thrown out, and you can't use it because they're alive, and in order for them to work, they need to stay alive. And so they're very sensitive to light. They're sensitive to disinfectants I might use, and they have a short shelf life once I've reconstituted them. So you got to watch them.
Excellent. 9 points for Bob. Thanks for joining us today. And as always, if you send your listener questions, we'll try to put those on the air. Send them at bci@ksu.edu.